Hello, I extend a very warm welcome to you on this discussion on the topic between religion and globalization. While we discuss on the issue elaborately, it is first mandatory to understand what globalization is. So, what is globalization? Well, I am sure all of us have heard the word a number of times earlier and every now and then. We see that most of us may relate it to just the economic aspect. It is here we see how the sociologists have seen it differently. They move beyond the economic factor to understand the phenomenon of globalization. They see much more than economy and economic relations. Well, for them, if we limit globalization to just economics, then the concept becomes too narrow. They are of the view that globalization has economic, political, social, cultural and ideological aspects. Well, globalization can be regarded as the tendency of technologies, philosophies and business to spread throughout the world, or the process of making this happen. It is the process of interaction and integration among different people, various companies and governments of different countries. Globalization as a process is aided by information technology and driven by investments and trade. The globalization process affects each and every aspect of the society, be it environment, culture or religion. No aspect of society remains untouched by globalization. Now, let us see some definitions of globalization given by some sociologists. Roland Robertson has defined globalization as the compression of the world and the intensification of the consciousness of the world as a whole. In the words of sociologists Martin Albro and Elizabeth King, globalization is regarded as all those processes by which the people of the world are incorporated into a single world society. According to Anthony Giddens, it is the intensification of worldwide social relations which link the distant localities in such a way that local happenings are shaped by events occurring many miles away and vice versa. Now, let us see the connection between religion and globalization. So, whenever we think about religion and globalization, there are two things that abruptly come to our mind. Well, first and foremost, we see that globalization has brought about many new religious beliefs, customs, values and traits to various places through exchange and interaction, and also reducing our cultural differences. However, on the other hand, it also plays an important role in eroding local customs and beliefs. We can see religion and globalization as partners in historical change. Also, that religion has acted as a carrier of globalization tendencies in the world. Well, if we look into the history of Christianity, it can be understood in part as an early effort to create a global network of believers. This is why it resulted as a world religion. The growth and influence of Christianity as a world religion resulted due to the link between its goal to spread far and wide across the globe and the ever expanding economy and politics. It was a globalizing force even before globalization as a phenomenon existed. However, this historical patterns are not just limited to the Christian religion. These elements of historical pattern can be found even in Buddhism, Islam and other religions. Now, let me discuss an incident here that reflects a lot of religion and globalization. The sad demise of Pope John Paul II has a lot of significance in our discussion of the topic. Well, Pope John Paul II died in the beginning of April 2005, and that brought an end to a long tenure of papacy. He was physically weak at the time of his death due to a long illness, but he was mentally and spiritually still strong. Well, the demise had been much anticipated, so much so that the channels broadcasting the occasion were ready with obituaries and statements much before the broadcast. His popularity was very high. His resistance to communism in East Europe was known by all. He was regarded as a catalyst to the events that led to the collapse of communism as a political system. He was, however, criticized for his views on birth control. Well, the Pope was a global figure where everyone knew him. As we see, we could consider him as the best known individual in the modern world. So, when he was dying, it was expected that the whole world had their eyes on Rome. Now, we can see that most of the countries put a hold to their normal activities for a day to show their respect. Rome had become the most eyed country as all the attention from media, religious leaders and other individuals were on it. Most of them even went to the city in the week before the funeral. So I guess this is one of the most perfect examples of religious presence in the modern world and of the relation between religion and globalization. We can see now that the influence of the Pope crossed all political and religious boundaries. Well, it is very much true that not every individual appreciated what they saw, but I am sure only a few can ever deny the impact Pope had on everyone. It was indeed remarkable. We can see the importance of Pope here too. In Britain, the royal marriage was postponed because Prince Charles himself, the then Prime Minister and the Archbishop of Canterbury, should attend the funeral of the Pope in Rome. This gesture was first of its kind in the 21st century, where the funeral was given more priority than the royal wedding. Now, let us understand the theoretical perspectives related to religion and globalization. Well, where and how religion is placed in the process of globalization entirely depends on how we understand it as a process. As we all know, globalization as a term may mean different things to different people. We can say that religion will have very little place in it if we understand it from an economic point of view. As you see, it takes place at a macroeconomic level of change, and so religious communities and individuals can either react or retreat about it. We can say that they are victims of the process which they cannot control. Theologically, liberal Christians articulate this approach as they carefully analyze the effects of these Western economic forces, which is most likely negative for people living in the developing world. The only significance of religion is in the provisions of heaven fundamentalist forms of religion for those who retreat from globalization. However, this is not the only story. If we look at globalization not only from an economic perspective, but many other perspectives, we will realize that religion has a very important place. Well, as a matter of fact, religious activities and those working in it make use of much better technologies and transnational network to establish and develop their relationships. So, they are undoubtedly global actors. The different type of activities carried out under the name of mission is one of the examples, along with the metamorphosis of the Catholic Church in the global ecumenical movement in a continuously increasing global network of religious organizations, faiths and beliefs, groups and denominations. This is a very good example of globalization in the past century. Well, whenever we talk about mission in Christian forms, we tend to understand it to be the movement of the people from north to south, earlier Europeans, later followed by Americans, moved across the world for building an empire. Language faced changes in the mid-post-war decades. Churches then in the developing countries began asserting their presence as equal partners of their European or American equivalents. These churches started becoming the centers of Christianity in their own right, larger than what they were back to their own homes. Organizational changes followed. Then what followed was partnership between dioceses and parishes, with one in the north and the other in the developing countries, complementing volunteering services and society as the main aim of these missions in many Western societies. Now, we can observe that a third stage, quite complex, is becoming evident in this evolution. On one hand, there is an increasing tendency to reverse the north-south flow due to the rising number of missionaries heading to Europe from the developing world, who is motivated by purely religious factors and few economic factors. On the other hand, the north-south axis is collapsing as mission becomes a series of movement from everywhere to everywhere else. Well, we could take Brazil here as a perfect example. The number of Brazilian missionaries working abroad are many, and also in the Portuguese speaking churches of the Brazilian diaspora in the United States, Japan, Paraguay and Europe. Let us not forget the South Koreans who are present all over the world. Another point also deserves mention here. Well, are these missionaries very important to the enterprise of mission, or is the movement of the people more important? We cannot ignore mobility when we are talking about globalization. It is central to globalization. When peoples start moving along with it, so do their ideas. We could take the example of Africa in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, where rapid Christianization took place. Now let us discuss about some theorists and their theories. I shall discuss about Robertson, Beckford, Baer and Lehman. Robertson and Beckford were of the view that until recent times not much attention was paid to the field of religion in globalization by sociologists, firmly along with its consequences for mainstream sociology. Here we will deal with three exceptions with this generalization. These exceptions have been put forth by Roland Robertson, Peter Bear and David Lehman. Nonetheless, the situation is, however, starting to change and improving as various scholars are now examining globalization and its meaning from their own perspectives for the forms of their own religion or religion they are familiar to. Let us talk about Roland Robertson. He was interested in globalization from a very early time that date back to 1960s. He also pays a lot of attention to religion. He assumes that when one works within a global perspective, transformation of the study of religion takes place. He says that it reconnects religion to the mainstream of economic and social life, and this helps in overcoming the isolationist assumptions curved in the Western experiences of modernity. He believes that when we think in a global context, we are actually thinking differently. We are thinking differently about religion, about classics, about the relation between sociology and its cognates, about the capability of religion to start as well as respond to change, and also about the linking of culture, ideas, politics and economy. Well, religion now becomes an infinite varied subject that interacts in a myriad different ways with the culture, ideas, politics and economy. Religion now is not considered as a factor that hinders the rising of a complete modern society. Robertson has also been critical of the world systems theory. He believes that globalization is not unidimensional as Wallerstein in the year 1979 maintains it. It is multidimensional with religion occupying a central place. He says that the main task of sociology of religion is to study this phenomenon seriously, document the occurring and derive necessary theoretical frameworks for a better understanding. Now, let us shift our focus to Peter Bear. He has responded to this challenge. Bear's Religion and Globalization of 1993 starts with an incident. The fatwa pronounced by the Ayatollah on Salman Rushdie in 1989. He makes use of this incident to show the global nature of the world we live in and the place religion has in it. Bear interprets the fatwa in two different ways. On one hand, the reaction to the Muslim to Rushdie's novel shows the relation between particularist identity and religious belief. On the other hand, it reveals a notion that Muslims are being asked to surrender the core of their faith as a price for full inclusion in a global system currently dominated by non-Muslims. With such a challenge, Bear's aim is to know about the institutionally specialized and systematic forms of religion present in the modern world and the different ways in which these find expressions. Bear believes that what needs attention here is the place attributed to religion in the public sphere. He believes that religion can operate in two different ways. On one hand, by revealing a tendency towards particularism and cultural distinctiveness, and on the other, a form of ecumenism. Ecumenism is the forms of religion that makes links with issues that emerge from a global, functionally differentiated society. Another theorist to mention in this context is David Lehman, who has a somewhat different view. He does not see religion as a part of the globalization process, as he believes that religion is itself the original globalizer. Lehman explains that there are two types of religious globalization owing to the difference in religion, cultural, economy and political characteristics of the individuals. These two types are the fundamentalist and the cosmopolitan. He uses the term fundamentalist for the first one. This type of religious globalization aims to extend cultural homogeneity. We may refer to the personality of a religious leader or the belief in their holy text, which may be a reason why they would not bring changes to their beliefs and practices despite a new culture. One important point to be understood here is that it does establish itself to a new culture, but does not acknowledge it. Cosmopolitan is the other type of religious globalization that he mentions aims at less emphasized differences in power between the new culture of the place to where they have migrated and post-migration culture. It allocates various degrees of recognition to the new culture of the region they have migrated to. Lehman says that the most important feature of this type is that it generates discourses on the relations between original culture and the new one. There are different types of global religion. Pentecostalism is one kind. The Pentecostal forms of Protestantism began to grow in the late 20th century in the southern hemisphere. This took place first in Latin America, Africa and all over the Pacific Rim. It is seen that the growth rate of Pentecostalism is fastest among people who find in this form of Christianity a vision for themselves and support for their family. Well, to speak in terms of theology, Pentecostalism provides a vision and is blessed by the Spirit and gifted with new opportunities. These communities transcend national, political and ethical boundaries as they are linked to a huge expanding network of churches and organizations. We should remember here that communications within these networks are in the English language. Another important factor is the capability of Pentecostalism to provide refuge. This is true in terms of practice and teaching. Hence, a set of communities are freely joined but firmly directed. Leadership is often authoritarian. This has proved to be a great combination in weak economies of the developing world. We can also see significant changes in the lifestyles of the people as a result. Well, for those people living in the global south, Pentecostalism has brought survival along with real improvement. It is a more modest enterprise than a direct application of the thesis of Max Weber or capital accumulation. Honesty, discipline and organizational talent stand out and also become the most needed skills to survive in the industry. As people move from villages to towns and cities for employment opportunities and better education, Pentecostal communities become, in a very practical sense, as Maldonado has said, heavens and way stations in the journey up the socio-economic ladder. This could be applied to countries and continents as well. This is why Pentecostalism is a global option for Martin. Let us talk about global ecumenism. The World Council of Churches, or the WCC, was officially founded in 1948. It is a global institution. It is a proper example of Peter Bear's second type, that is a form of religion that makes links with the questions that arise from a global, functionally differentiated society. We see that the members of the WCC are diverse in origin, very qualified and efficient. The WCC became the channel through which the different streams of ecumenical life that already existed were brought together. The main goal of WCC was to bring together both Christians and churches to visible unity in one faith and one Eucharistic fellowship, expressed in worship and common life in Christ, through witness and service to the world, and to advance towards unity in order that the world may believe according to the WCC constitution. We can now say that a lot of progress has been made, even though visible unity is still an aspiration. The early goals of WCC, when it was first created, was focusing on bringing world peace, as it was affected a lot by the Cold War and its effect on the church life. Well, it started its quest for methods to eradicate differences between the East and the West. It supported the togetherness of insight of Marxism and Christianity. After 1989, this changed radically, and reactionary and conservative religion grew especially in the late 20th century. Let us now discuss about Islam. Pentecostalism and resurgence from Islam are both parts of the self-conscious awakening of a part of the world that has not been included in the mainstream. Let us discuss the Indonesian case with special mention of the Pancasila. In the modern world, Indonesia is the largest Muslim nation. It has 240 million people with 88% Muslims. During 1990, when the economy of the nation plummeted due to a financial crisis, a major religious change also took place. At the same time, with 2 million Muslims converting to Christianity and Hinduism due to violence of the mid-1960s. We can say that this is the largest conversion for Islam in modern times. What we need to see here is the nature of Islam. It is plural. According to Hefner, pluralism has always been the case of Muslims like Christians. However, in the late 20th century in Indonesia, the notion has a certain vibe. In the case of revival of Islam and the development of a well-educated middle class, the reformists have an important role. It is this middle class who are finding new ways forward for the Indonesian state. They also had a crucial role to play in the dethroning of President Suharto in 1988. The presence of the middle class can also be seen around the debate of Pancasila. So, what is Pancasila? It is the official doctrine underlying the Indonesian state. Well, the Pancasila consists of basic principles. They are the belief in one supreme God, humanitarianism, consultative democracy, and social justice. The first one is a bit controversial and important for a political discussion as to what is that one supreme God. Different religions have different views. Muslims support their own God and others their own too. Well, religion is said to be present for the well-being of the people, and the state recognizes 5 religions with Islam in majority and Protestantism, Catholicism, Hinduism and Buddhism. Well, taking this fact that there is an imbalance in religious divisions, we can say that the Pancasila is quite a splendid attempt to take in these religious differences and also affirm the cultural diversity. It has been a better way forward for Indonesia, as it neither endorses a Muslim nation nor a completely secular state. However, we do not tell when this would be carried on. As we come to the end, well, let me conclude this discussion by saying that globalization has touched all the aspects of our lives, the world and the society, and religion is no exception. As much as it has helped in strengthening our religious roots and bringing us awareness about it, also it has resulted in eradicating our culture and values and replacing it with new ones. As globalization brings about acculturation and accommodation of new cultures and religions, it also leads to the vanishing of the original ones or the modifications of them. Now, new religions are coming up to satisfy people who did not find their queries answered by their faith. Conversions are taking place and global religions are rising. With this, I end my discussion on the topic religion and globalization. Thank you.